All right, Demetri, we're going live in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, movie fans, Demetri Panos here on the Popcorn Talk Network's Anatomy of a Movie. You know, they say necessity is the mother of all invention. Well, we're going to talk about mother to see if it was necessary at all. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Cue the music that wasn't in the movie. Hello, everybody. Hey, movie fans, what's happening? Yes, today we dissect, to the best of our capability, that you can dissect a movie.
I feel like my mind was dissected
Mother.
watching this.
I felt as if I were being dissected, but I digress. So welcome. This is Popcorn Talk Network's Anatomy of a Movie. And today, I got my lovely, awesome, original co-host from
Yes.
day one, Marisa Serafini. How
Hello,
are you,
Demetri.
Marisa?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm just ducky.
Ducky. I
Thanks
think
for
that's one of
asking.
the words you can describe how you feel after this film.
Oh, no. Ducky is not the word that I would describe after
Maybe?
seeing this
Okay.
film.
I was trying to be positive.
Yeah, well, good. I appreciate that. Yeah, and Marisa, since day one, we have like 350 shows under our belt.
It's always back to us.
Always.
Always.
Love it. So, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV. You can follow our show at Movie Anatomy. We post a lot of things, and we always promote what's coming up
Absolutely.
next. We talk a lot of movies, as you can tell from our roster of 400 plus movies
Yeah.
we've covered.
Yeah, we've done
All
a
we do
lot.
is watch movies.
Some movies we've loved, some movies we've not loved, and some movies we're still trying to this day to figure out.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we are talking about Darren Aronofsky's latest opus, which has, he brought together an amazing cast. As far as cast goes, you got Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Ed Harris, Michelle Pfeiffer in a rare on-screen appearance, and I always love seeing her.
Why do you say rare?
Well, because she doesn't do a lot of movies lately. She's not in like a ton of stuff.
I know, but she's in like 3 movies this year, and she even said in an interview there are just times where she films movies, but they all just come out in the same chunk amount of time in the year. So like she's consistently working. It's just when the production
I forget the
actually
last movie I saw
releases
her
it.
in.
Yeah.
So I mean, but she's always a pleasure to see on screen.
I love Michelle Pfeiffer.
So we have a great cast together. So, well, as we always do, and this is going to be a fun. I think this is going to be a fun dissection. We always talk about opinion, and this movie has been so divisive amongst people for various reasons. So, as we're going to dive in to Mother right now, what did you think? I saw your tweet. You saw it about a week ago.
Yeah, I saw it on a Friday, so
Yeah.
literally a week ago from today.
Yeah.
I've had a week to process what I watched, and now we're talking about it. Literally at first, and we'll just set this particular show to explicit. What the fuck did I just watch?
I think that's what you tweeted. Something similar.
Like what did I just watch? And in fairness, I watched a fairly later showing, so I was kind of tired watching it. So mentally, I just wasn't prepared for the craziness that I witnessed in this film. But afterwards, probably 30 minutes after I watched the film, I had learned the fact of that, there's the allegories tied into the story. And I appreciate that moment where I was like, that realization.
The
I
epiphany.
appreciate. Yes.
Okay.
And I think that was executed well from Aronosky once you realize that point. But you can't realize that until after the fact or unless someone spoiled it for you. There's that moment.
True.
If you just watch this film isolated by itself, you're going to have so many slew of different emotions and how you feel, what you thought of. But then until someone spoon feeds you what it was really what it is, I think it takes away the magic. Not really magic, but it takes away like the raw wow factor of this film, what it's supposed to build up to.
Sure. And just so you are aware that we are very spoilerific.
Yes, we are.
This is a hard movie to spoil, I think. But we are going to talk about various plot points and, to your point, allegories. So if you haven't seen the movie, well, we welcome you to come on board.
Yeah.
Actually, this might be a good primer for you to go see the movie after, because we will talk about research. I never research a movie prior to my seeing it, and I never research a movie before I go and write a review.
Okay.
Just for pure fact, I don't want anything spoiled. Does that make sense?
Right, you don't want people to influence you.
Well,
in
yeah,
that
and I
way.
just don't want anything spoiled, because sometimes in articles they might give out a plot point that I may not, nor would I want to know about before seeing the film. So all I can say is, motherfucker.
Right.
I knew I was in trouble after watching the first teaser trailer when it looked chilling and macabre, and it had that music, the music we opened up with, right? And I was like, okay, it's Darren Aronofsky. Okay, I get it. But then the second full-length trailer came out, and I was no more wiser, and it was just longer of nothing. And I was like, okay. I sort of kind of felt that was not a good sign, and did Mother deliver for me. First and foremost, I am not one that believes that cinema should make one feel uncomfortable for the sake of making you feel uncomfortable.
You don't like that.
I do, and I realized that about myself when I was in film class. I was a young pup, much younger than I am today, and we were learning about Louis Buñuel, and he was experimental filmmaker, surreal, but his whole being was to make audiences feel uncomfortable. And I sat and watching this in class, going, I don't need this in my life. Like, why? Like, I don't mind if there's a method to the madness, but when there's just madness for this, I'm just like, movies should entertain. Okay. So, and Mother was just undescribable madness to me. In fact, I was thinking about this movie Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. And I remember we talked about that. You should check out that podcast. It is very entertaining and lively.
All right, you guys were uncomfortable during that one.
Well, but that had more of a plot. It had more of a plot than this. And with Mother, as you're saying, like, as I was watching Mother, I was like going, okay, is this an allegory for Christ? I said, well, no, it can't really be, because it's not a virgin birth, right? And then I was like, well, is it an allegory of the artistic creation and making it a metaphor for childbirth, which could be very painful? And then I'm like, well, but that a man can only imagine that. You know what I'm saying? A man doesn't go through that. They can only imagine that. So I don't know. And then I was like, well, maybe it's about creativity and the person who has his muse but doesn't pay attention to the muse, and hence he misreads signs and then things go chaotic. Could it be that? Was it all of the above? None of the above? My hair hurt as I was watching this movie. It just did. And then, it was like, I had been tortured for no really good reason. And I mentioned the cast because I can't blame them. They all performed. Ed Harris was good.
Oh,
Michelle
yeah. There was nothing wrong with the performances in
Nope.
this film. This is one of those films that I don't want to say suffers, but you can tell when movies are driven, or like something that takes down a movie is either the acting or the writing or the performance or the story. Mm-hmm. And I think story is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the performances. If there was going to be a positive about Darren Aronofsky, is that he directed his talent well, and they gave solid performances. But again, when we've talked about Jennifer Lawrence in movies like American Hustle and outside of, like, say, Hunger Games,
Right.
I think you would agree that she always successfully acts and portrays well beyond her years. I mean, she's young. But she's
my age.
She emotes like she can play an older, like, she's a good actress in that sense. This is the first movie I have to say where she looked her age, and I think it was on purpose, because the age difference between her and Javier, that made me feel uncomfortable. Granted, I know it was on purpose, and thankfully it was even mentioned in the movie.
Several times.
Several times, right?
Like, I'm glad of their self-awareness, because for the longtime listeners of this show, you know how much that bothers me. When there's a significant age
We've
gap,
talked about that.
whether it be the man's older or the woman's older, that, like, there's no... I'm just tired of the constant trope that there has to be an age gap for something to maybe work, or to play these different things. And I get it, it happens in real life, but we don't need to keep seeing it in movies or in television. Or but at least this one had an age gap, but they were very self-aware of it, and they actually poked fun at it.
Yeah, it
So I
was brought up,
appreciate
so I was
that.
like, okay. Because it was in this movie, especially with Jennifer Lawrence, like I said before, she always seems to portray a character well above her years, and for the most part, she succeeds at it. Except here, and again, I think it was done on purpose, and it just got to a point where I just didn't know what the hell was going on. And I have to say, one of the entities I blame the most, I think, is Paramount Pictures. This movie staggered my distribution background. And then I was watching this and I thought of another movie, and it's a perfect comparison, I think, because I was at Lionsgate at the time. We released this movie in 2007. It's called Bug. Do you remember Bug with Ashley Judd and
yeah.
Michael Shannon? It was
Yeah.
the first time I was introduced to Michael Shannon as an actor. Again, good performances, but it's a what the F
a
kind
weird
of movie,
movie,
right?
yeah.
But the marketing department egregiously cheated the marketing in the trailers. They made it look like a horror movie.
It did, yeah.
Which it was easy because it was directed by William Friedkin. Okay, so you make it look like a horror movie. It went relatively wide like Bug, right? It gets in the 60s on Rotten Tomatoes, but an F in CinemaScore, because once people saw it, they were like, what the hell?
Yeah,
What
right.
did I just watch? And it just made me think of that. And listen, why this movie went wide, no idea. We'll talk a little bit about the distribution pattern and marketing. But for me, for Paramount's sake, I hope this is an example of a studio's reorganization process, and they're just trying to expel the chaff. Get rid of the bad to make room for the good stuff. Because Mother, what have you done? Well, you made me angry. You made me very angry. And as Sigmund Freud has said...
Well, they made Mother angry in this film, too, so shoot.
Well, as Sigmund Freud says, it all points back to the mother. And who knew he was a movie fan? But you're right. They did make Mother.
Pissed off the mother.
Yeah, so I want to open up on this whole... I want to talk about the production. Because a lot of this is fascinating, because this comes from the mind of Darren Aronofsky, who's...
Skipping around a little bit in this one, because this movie skips around a bit,
Yeah.
honestly.
So, but we're going to try to
If we
make
get
sense of
progressively frustrated during
nonsense.
this, you know why.
Yeah, but we're going to try to make sense of nonsense. And this all came to him, almost on a whim. Like, he said it took him about 5 days to write, which is, he claims, one of the shortest
Writing
times
periods
that
that he
he's-
usually takes
for
as
him.
a writer.
Right.
But when inspiration hits you, it hits you. I mean, look at John Hughes. He wrote amazing movies in like a day.
Sure.
So I mean, it happens in different time lanes for every writer, every creator, in that sense. So for him to really have an idea and he just wrote it down in 5 days, I applaud him. It's crazy how he even thought up of the concept.
Sure. Absolutely. And again, I dumped off a lot of things. And again, I did the research after. And the movie is, there are biblical allegories, and there are topical allegories to climate change, and the biblical allegories of creation and such. And putting this in a movie is, it was crazy.
Yeah, so, for basically the development of this, Aronosky was alone in his home, and he had been contemplating his complete helplessness to combat the world's environmental destruction. Global warming going on, the Earth is pissed at us, Mother Earth is literally pissed at the world because of tsunamis and tornadoes and earthquakes, and so it is actually timely relevant right now. So he was contemplating contemplating his complete helplessness to combat the world's environmental destruction. And he just decided to spin a story around a single emotion, which was rage, which we definitely got in this film. We'll get more into, and spent the next 5 days writing about it. In the script pouring out of him like a fever dream.
And it plays like a fever dream.
It does.
It plays like a fever dream.
At the end, I thought this, not to jump all around, but like literally at the end, I had this thought train. I was like, this is too unreal to be real. Like, this is too messed up to even be a real thing. It has to be a dream of some sort. Or this was just like a thought, or no way could this be real.
Right. And you went into it, it sounds like, the way I went into it, knowing what you may have seen in the trailer. Again, I usually stay away from research and reading articles about a movie. I don't want things spoiled. So as I'm watching it, to make that leap into this is a climate change thing. Yes, I can see it in hindsight after I've done research, but even in hindsight, I go, yeah, no. I'm like, there was nothing to prime me for this movie outside of the trailers.
Nothing can prepare you to watch this film.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to watch us first, and we'll break down the allegories of God and creation and how we disrespect Mother Earth, so to speak.
Speaking of which, you can also download a rundown, which is in the description on our website and on YouTube. Go download it. It has all of our notes and more, and all the research, and it definitely has a big section on all these specific allegories that are in this film.
And now, and it's very interesting because, as you said, all of this information is coming out more or less recently with the release of the movie, not prior to the movie. And again, we'll talk marketing. I just don't know how, if it was released prior, would I have enjoyed the movie any more? I would have thought certain aspects may have been ruined, I guess, but I don't know how you market that anyways, and would you get people to go? But let's talk, should we talk character, Darren Aronofsky's direction? I think let's talk about...
Yeah, let's talk about the cast, shall we?
Let's talk about the cast, because you mentioned it.
I mean,
a strong cast.
I don't want to start with Jennifer Lawrence, because she is the main pinnacle of this film. But Javier Bardem, his portrayal of him, with capital H, and we'll get into that too. But his portrayal, at first I was unsure of whether I was supposed to trust this man or not, especially how they kind of introduced him, like we see the whole tracking shot of her walking through the house, and then he kind of appears like something scary is about to appear, and he just appears there on the porch. But knowing that they were in a relationship, I was like, okay, they're husband and wife, I should trust him. But then when he was putting more trust into the people who were slowly coming into the house, and he wasn't really paying attention to his wife, I'm like, where are your loyalties? And it made me question what type of character this guy was.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it should be noted that this is another movie where there were really no names. Earlier this year... On purpose. But earlier this year we had Dunkirk, which had really no names. Like, sometimes we'd hear a first name, but there were no last names. Like, there
were no like direct addresses to each character. Like, oh, hey, Demetri.
Right.
How are you today? There were none of those moments where like purposely introduce the audience to which character and what their name is.
Yeah, some characters' names I didn't know until I saw on IMDb in my making of Dunkirk.
They had names. Who knew?
So, exactly. So as I was watching this, I'm going, a second movie who's using this idea of there were no names, and nobody was ever called by anything. The only thing that we actually got was Ed Harris. Oh, we got two. We got Ed Harris as the doctor. He's a doctor. And then we had the surprise cameo, which sort of kind of took me out of the movie, Kristen Wiig as the publicist. So, but that was like the only thing.
But even like those aren't names; those are titles.
It's a title, right?
Yeah.
So I just found it interesting that second movie this year, in which they're not going names. Obviously, for purposes of each movie, it was very much done on purpose. And you're right, Javier Bardem was creepy, and he was the creator. He's the creator. He's the creative guy. He's a poet. That we understand. He's a poet, and I just felt that's why he's a writer, and that's why I felt okay. He was having a hard time writing. Okay, and there was one scene, I don't know if you recall. He's in his writer's room, and he had things up of what was to be his writing, but it was all just scribble. It looked like charcoal thing.
Drawing.
So he had a mental block. He had writer's block. It seemed. It appeared.
All great creators do.
It's so well, and that's why I went. Okay, so this is about the creative process and how hard it is. But then, why is this from Jennifer Lawrence's perspective? It should be. Or maybe it is actually from his perspective. He's just seeing. I don't know. My hair's starting to hurt again. But when he starts inviting strangers into his house, right? We get Ed Harris as the first guy.
Yes.
Right? He comes in, and there's a very good story. I'm a doctor. I got lost. Oh, they actually said your house, this beautiful house. Beautiful house out in the middle of nowhere, right? But it's a beautiful, Victorian
that's
house.
already questionable in red flags. Why are you in this random place?
Yeah, and it just seemed, again, if you're going by what is simply given to you, we've seen this in other movies. The writer needs to write. He's out in seclusion. It's a fixer-upper. Jennifer Lawrence's character is fixing the house. And
sorry.
Go ahead.
One thing, but there is a big section of the house which we'll get to. But in the first 5 minutes of the movie, when she's walking around the house and everything was creaking, I'm like, oh no, it's gonna be this type of house. This is all we're gonna hear throughout this entire effing movie. It's just the creakiness. I was like, someone get them WD-40. But that's it. Okay.
Yeah, it's a fixer-upper, right? And it was interesting. So our first guest arrived, Ed Harris, who is really good, and he claims he's a doctor.
Again, another person that I wasn't sure to trust him, because the way they established him, you can't justify if he's good or bad. You just know he is a big fan of
We learn that later.
him.
We learn that later because he comes and says,
He comes as a stranger.
Yeah, he comes as a stranger. Javier Bardem goes on a walk. He brings him back. He says, I found this gentleman outside. He's lost. He's a doctor. He's new in town. He's going to be the new doctor at the hospital. And he comes out. He says, I was told this was a bed and breakfast, and I can stay here. And he's coughing. He's ill. And Javier Bardem takes him sort of, the way I saw it was he saw pity on him and said, well, you can't go back out there.
I saw compassion.
Compassion.
More than pity.
And, compassion. And he says, you can't go back out there. You've got no place to stay. We've got this huge house. Why don't you stay here? And Jennifer Lawrence's character was like, is this a good idea? He's just like a stranger. And I was like, it's not a bad idea. I understand at that point, I was understanding Javier Bardem's motive.
I understand the motive, but I think as a woman, I think it would have been great knowing that they are husband and wife and they're in this house together. A good husband and a good man would consult the wife first and, hey, I invited him over, or let her know that this was going to happen instead of blindsiding her with a complete new stranger.
Yes. I agree.
I was frustrated at that.
Yeah. And she was too.
Yes.
And there was, some meager apology, but he stays over. And we find out that he's ill, that he's coughing a lot. But Ed Harris, let's talk about his...
up a lung.
Yeah,
I'm like, ew.
Something.
It was something.
But again, he was really good, Ed Harris.
Yeah,
this role.
There was nothing wrong with the talent or the acting in this. We have a bunch of Academy Award winners and nominees in this film, so nothing wrong with the acting.
And Javier Bardem's performance too, he actually, it was a tightrope, because sometimes you can tell he was sensitive, other times he was creepy, right?
Huh.
And there were other times where you felt he did have love for his wife, like, and he would be apologetic, but then there were, like, his character went in and out of emotions very often, I felt, but he handled it well, and he did it seamlessly. Would you agree?
I think so too. I mean, you can definitely tell when he was angry or upset, or when he was compassionate towards someone, or he was like really enjoying all the love and praise he was getting from his fans,
right.
quote unquote.
Right.
You can always gauge like where he was emotionally.
Right.
But there were moments, and I think this is just because of the actor of Javier. He's amazing.
Yeah.
But because of the other roles that he's also known for, like No Country for Old Men,
Sure.
where he has a very scary physical look, and that's really intimidating, and you know what he's capable of.
Right.
Spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen that, he's a killer.
Right.
He will literally shoot your head off at any second based on a coin.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that Javier Bardem can get to that level of crazy psychoticness, I wasn't sure what to expect for this character in this film, especially during the moment when he was just staring at Mother
Right.
for
Jennifer
so long,
Lawrence,
for
right.
a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is he going to do?
Right. Yeah, that I sort of figured I knew what he wants to do, and Darren Aronofsky says about Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence that, you know, the ideas of the movie and his structure and set pieces, you know, within the 5 days that he was shooting, they were all there, and he wanted to try to make the characters as real as possible, and he really does believe that Jennifer or Ms. Lawrence and Mr. Bardem were able to do that. They were able to translate these big illusions and or metaphors into human characters. And that's the thing. I did look at them as human characters. And husband and wife, she was not a battered wife, however, she was a neglected wife.
Yes.
In a sense. Even though she would support him at every turn, you know, he would say something or lack of something and go, well, I'm just going to go. And right, or I'm going to go to bed. Or I'm going to go take a hike. And that's where I felt for Jennifer Lawrence's mother character. But Javier was very good at doing that. So we're introduced to Ed Harris, who again was really well as the doctor. We come to find out he's not really a doctor. He's a fan. He's a fan of Javier's work. And then I started to think of Misery. And I started to think, oh, maybe this is where this movie is sort of kind of going to go.
Yeah.
Right? He's a fan. And then the next morning, a woman shows up. That's his...
Well, this was also after the fact he was coughing up a lung.
Oh, well, yeah.
He had a mysterious mark on his back that, like, covered with the hand. I'm like, what is that? And then and literally the next morning, we saw Mother trying to flush down whatever the hell that was in the toilet. That was nasty. There are a lot of theories. There's actually a lot of theories out there. People think it was a lung, it was a rib. I was like, that was some type of organ.
I thought it was a heart.
It looked
and
like a heart.
It came up like, yeah.
Yeah, it really looked like a heart.
And if I'm sorry, folks, we're jumping around, but this scene is, again, I'm not the first one to say this. It was very David Cronenberg-ish, where she was trying to flush something down the toilet, and then something popped up, something floated up. There was some blood, and there was something. Jennifer Lawrence seemed to have been connected to the house in one way, shape, or form, right? Okay, I have that sort of right. And we would see inside the house had its own heartbeat. I took it to be a heart.
I took it to be like some sign of life.
Okay.
Some sign of life, whether it be a
Fair
heart.
enough.
It looked like, and the shape was so irregular. It could have been a heart. It could have been a fetus. We really don't know. There was really no delineation to the object we kept seeing, but we saw that there was light to it. There was life to it, and it was like slowly disintegrating throughout the entire film.
Yeah. And she flushes it back down the toilet. Oh, plunger.
Goodness.
So
yes.
This is a common theme in this movie, right? So now our next guest shows up, the wife of the man, the doctor, the fan. And This is Michelle Pfeiffer, who again, still,
Woman.
you know, she's still great on screen.
She's so
She has
striking. I love her.
I mean, even to this day, she is. She maintains. She's very striking. She can. What I love about her is she could cut you down with a stare.
Yeah, she pierce right through you.
Pierce right through you. And then I was wondering, okay, now I'm going, because she had that attitude towards Jennifer Lawrence. I'm like, what the hell is that all about?
Yeah.
What's
It's like,
going on?
She's the stranger, and that's what also bothered me with the woman. She's the stranger in their house, and she's the one that's being rude and dismissive of everyone. And I did not like that. If someone was in my house, I would have been like, get the hell out.
Yeah, neither
Shoot.
did I. I didn't.
I would not have stood up.
Yeah,
stood
I
for
didn't
that.
like that at all. And she was very mean about it. And she became even, she got to a point where she literally would be looking straight at Jennifer Lawrence's character and not even acknowledge her. She'd be talking about Javier Bardem. Thank you to our host. Singular, as she's looking at Jennifer Lawrence. It was, so, again, more discomfort heaped upon discomfort.
It was like it's adding injury to insult. You know, it was not a nice way to portray this woman, and I'm like, okay, I don't like her.
Right.
I don't like her. Something is wrong with her.
Something's wrong. But then again, there was this scene where she was having her lemonade, and you're like going, she was like, hey, girl talk. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe we're going to see, all right, I get it. It was a nice side of her. But Jennifer Lawrence's character was so naive, innocent. She wasn't, she felt uncomfortable of the conversation that was going on. And then it was just, again, it's a home invasion. Sort of kind of to Jennifer Lawrence. It's a home invasion. Like, these people had no respect for other people's property, and they just felt, come on in. And then, to your point earlier too, Javier Bardem's like, oh, come on, where are they going to go? And you understand Jennifer Lawrence's like, no, these people are rude. Like, they're not picking up after themselves.
And that's what I was really frustrated with him, you know, the man, that he wasn't doing anything about it. You can clearly tell that the mother cared more about the house than the man did.
Of course. And she was doing so much work in that house. Good work. And people were complimenting on how beautiful it was looking. And yet people would come in and invade privacy, don't go in that room, and they would still go in that room.
Right.
And that was a scene too, because we basically had what I called the Pink Panther diamond. Right? We had this, you know, that's what I saw this thing as. And it was this, it looked like the Pink Panther diamond. It was this huge crystal, had some red stuff going on, but it was
there was some
unobtainium.
Special effect lighting on it that you see. You like, if you literally looked at a heart, it looked like the sparkly lines that went through it are like the ventricles or the arteries that surround the heart.
And through Javier Bardem, we learned this is like one of the rarest things. It's very hard to obtain. And one of the reasons why they don't want people in the room touching this thing.
Right.
So you know, as an audience member, okay, that's very expensive, whatever this is. It's a crystal that nobody really has. Yet people invade the house. And you feel angry. Like I did, anyways.
I was very.
And this is
because that was an attainable thing to not do. Right. It wasn't a over, you know, like a request that was, you know, over the top or like or I can't think of the word.
It wasn't an unobjectionable request. It was a pretty
It was a very reasonable
Right.
request.
It wasn't unreasonable, and we're still at a point in the movie where it's somewhat understandable. Mm-hmm. Like, we may not know these people, but we understand frustration, we understand rudeness, and we understand now it's turning into anger, right? And we're learning more about this invading couple that Ed Harris's character is a fan. He finds out that he's dying, and he really wanted to meet Javier Bardem's character.
Before he
died. That was like his bucket list. And then all chaos breaks loose when the whole family.
And I feel like this is where, like, the shift when the sons came in.
Yes.
This is where the movie shifted for me, completely emotional. At first, it was like more thriller. Now it's just kind of on the first steps to horror.
For me, it was the first steps of what the hell is going on here. However, it should be pointed out that one of the sons, Domhnall
Gleeson, love him.
This guy, I gotta tell you, what a wonderful chameleon. Like, he is the actor's actor. Mm-hmm. He makes it look easy. He can play romantic comedy. He can be in a Star Wars movie. He's in this this Tom Cruise movie, Made in America, I think. Which those trailers, he looks fantastic. Every movie,
American Made.
American Made.
That's it.
What a chameleon this guy is. And here he comes in this movie, and I had to like take a double take. I didn't even know he was in the movie.
Oh, see, I knew he was going to be in the movie.
I didn't know he was in the movie.
I didn't know to what capacity he was going to be in the movie. But when his short amount of time on screen, it was very effective.
Extremely effective.
Because his character changed the whole emotional tone of what was happening. It literally heightened the situation that was going on, because it went from calm to literally too much excitement and horror.
Absolutely.
And you didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and now the family, now the couple, the married couple in the house, they seem to be losing control of this situation. Mm-hmm. Because the sons show up because there's the will is being contested. Like, you know, and it's all about money. And the two brothers, one brother did something behind the other brother's back, Domhnall Gleeson, and
like the parents favored the younger brother.
Yeah, they favored, and you could tell one was a little wild, and then a big fight happens, and then a murder in the house.
Yep.
Which now you're like,
and it comes out of nowhere.
What the now? One of the first what the fucks, like going wow, and
played by his real life brother Brian Gleeson. They are real life brothers.
Yeah,
so it made it feel authentic.
Yeah, I mean, here's a fight that's taking place over a will, and again, as an audience member, like, you're understanding what's going on, but then you're sort of, if you're looking as like you're the married couple, you're figure what the hell is going on. Like, you guys have to take this out, because now we've got murder. Where are the cops? And
they're nowhere near that house.
And Dom D. Gleason's character runs out, although not before seeing Jennifer Lawrence's character before he escapes.
But also the scary thing was that he came back.
Yeah.
He came back to the house in a very creepy way, like a murderer, stalker, any type of person in a horror film would do, like break in. That adds a level of scariness to the film. Again, yet another person you could not trust.
No, and he just came back. He forgot his wallet.
Yeah.
And he walked out, never to be seen again.
But they had a proper working phone compared to that house phone.
So
had they been up to date with technology, it's like, hey, I forgot my wallet. Let me call you on my cell phone.
Up to this point, I feel like we're breaking this movie down in scenes, but you sort of kind of have to, right? Because,
and we'll definitely get into the allegories, you guys.
Yeah, and so we go from there, and then there is a funeral, but a memorial. Everything takes place in the house, so we don't see the funeral, but we see everybody coming back. And again, bigger house invasion this time. More people coming into the house.
More disruptive, more disrespectful.
Yes, people. Add to that, they're asking the married couple to give eulogies for people that they don't know.
Right. And now they're also, the movie is progressing to a point where they are physically destroying the house. Mm-hmm. This is one of the first steps of ruining this environment.
And Jennifer Lawrence, and again, this is where I thought this was going to be a psychological thriller, because her her mind starts to, well, she starts to crack, much like various parts of the house. And then you're figuring, oh, I get it. It's symbolism for the house. And she's connected to the house, and she already has maybe some mental problems. And she's starting to crack, like a crack in the ceiling that's getting bigger and bigger, or a crack in the floor.
Right.
That she tries to cover.
That plank there with the blood.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So
that was the first mark on the house.
Right. And it was just, well, that too, it can be interpreted like
so many different ways.
So many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're getting into like things are getting out of hand, because the family more or less leaves, and you think things are going to settle.
Well, it was
down.
also because they purposely were going against the mother's wishes when
Right.
she's like, get off the freaking sink.
Yeah,
it's not
stable.
properly mounted.
Right.
And then they were purposely like ruining the sink just to try to prove her wrong. And again, she proved them right.
Right.
And then that's where things are like, when the house is now physically breaking down,
Right.
she also had that emotional breakdown.
Yes, and everybody leaves. But then the movie does something weird. You feel like things are going back to a normalcy because
Some stasis.
Javier Bardem's character has an epiphany. He's inspired, and he's gonna write. It was also brought up too. There was a big dialogue between Michelle Pfeiffer and Jennifer Lawrence about kids, and who can have kids, and why don't you have kids, and
Right.
all of this.
Well, it was also being very accusatory at the same way.
Yeah,
It's
how can
like,
you not wanna have
something's wrong for
Right.
like if you're a beautiful woman, then something must be wrong. if you
Beautiful
guys-
and young.
Yeah, and young. Something's wrong.
And-
Okay, this is also there were so many things in this film that
Yeah.
frustrated
Go
me.
ahead.
But I was more frustrated at the audience didn't get to see what he wrote. We heard maybe a little snippet, but all we hear is him. He finally wrote a very successful piece of writing,
Right.
and they refer to it. We never see it though.
No, we never see it, and we can only hear from Jennifer Lawrence's mother, because she reads it, and she starts to weep and says, "This is the best work you've ever read. So emotional." That's all I really needed. Like, for her to be so emotional and tell her husband, and again, you buy it. She wasn't just saying it as just to support her husband. She
It's beautiful.
truly said, "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever read. I'm so proud of you." And then the first ding comes when, she was not the first person to read it, because he had sent it off to his agent, and
Yeah.
he had read it. And then I'm wondering, when the hell did he do that? What? How?
Like, how do you even have time to do that? And you don't even have the technology to do that.
Yeah, and but again, mother being disrespected. In a
Yes.
sense, she wasn't the first. And again, my timeline is sort of hazy, but they end up sleeping together, and their sexual activity had been non-existent, basically. He kept on ignoring her, and this also the act was born out of anger, if you remember. It wasn't something that
Right, because that's when the woman and man destroyed the crystal thing that he had.
Yeah.
And he was so angry
crystal.
he closed the door and started writing.
Yep. The Pink Panther diamond gets destroyed because people violated their space.
Yes.
It gets destroyed. And as a viewer, you're like, I was really pissed.
Yeah. Sleeping, yes, thank you, Adelia. She says in the live chat that sleeping together gave him also epiphany to start writing.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And this was like when we can kind of assume there was like one day that time lapse from the crazy family
Sure.
now going away. Some time has passed before like things got back to normal, and then they could focus on each other.
Right. And there seemed to be some good love and passion there, right? For a short time.
Yeah.
Even when Jennifer Lawrence wakes
Did you
up.
believe it?
Did I believe what?
Did you believe their love for each other? The mother
in that one
and
scene,
him.
it was
Or in this
very,
whole film.
very awkward. It was very awkward, and I think for me it was very uncomfortable. I bought it when he was like trying to protect her, but then he would turn and do something so not nice. I believed her love for him. I did. I believed her love for him was undying. That she did. And at the end of this story, of course, she gave everything that there was to give, including and everything else that she had. She gave all. Unlike people and how they treated her. So she immediately knew that she was pregnant. And now we're going through the pregnancy stages.
And there was another time jump.
Yes.
During this. And I'm glad we didn't watch that. Because throughout this entire film, we're literally just watching Jennifer Lawrence walk around this entire house.
Right.
From point A to point B to point C back to point A. And I'm like, if we watched her throughout this entire pregnancy, I think I would have left.
Yeah, and add to that, Javier Bardem's book has taken off.
Yes.
Taken off. He has fans showing up to the house, to the outside of the house. At first, just a few, and he goes out and greets them, signs them, but the fans slowly turn to fanatics.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are crazy people. Like they're crazy fans.
There's fans, and then there's like
Kathy
a whole
Bates fans.
another level.
That's why I was thinking.
Then there's psychotic fans.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking like Misery. Maybe this is, and then Baby's Born. And this is where, again, I go into that Christ
right.
thing. Because I was like going, oh, this is going to bring peace. All these fans.
Well, the house is now really
now the
getting
house-
destroyed by
right.
everyone. Everyone just makes their way into the house.
And Javier Bardem allows them in.
Yeah, and then there were moments where you can see that there was like some religious aspect to this film, how they were treating each other, how everything was in like a congregation type of style, and we'll get into the
Yeah, it's very
allegories.
interesting. So then things just go off the rails. Then it turns into a war movie inside the house.
Yeah,
We have soldiers marching, fans. We have
have
the
the
birth
SWAT
of Jesus
team come
Christ. We have
in.
SWAT teams. We have this birth of Jesus Christ who's supposed to help make peace. The baby, like that scene too. Like, so they're in the bedroom where the baby was born. She's holding the baby, and she's like, "You're not taking the baby out there. You're just not taking him
and this
out
is
there."
where it was really uncomfortable because it went from chaotic mess outside that room, and then it stuck with these two people, like in a battle of wits.
Yes, and this is where
And
you
what's
go.
worse, crazy fandom, like literally destroying stuff, or two people going at it mentally?
And there were fandom that were turning into zealots, in a sense,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And then you had Javier Bardem, and this is for me too the most uncomfortable, like in his performance,
Oh.
the way he was just staring. He
we're
wasn't
getting-
blinking.
we're getting
He
to it.
reminded me of Shagru from
Yeah,
Old Country for
from
Old Men.
this is the moment I'm like, oh my god, what is he going
changes.
to do?
Yep.
What is he going to do to his wife?
Yep.
I mean, he didn't have a shotgun on him, but I know what he's capable of.
And he's like, I have to show them to my fans, and she's like, no.
You know?
No. And then it becomes, like you said, a battle of wills. She eventually falls asleep. And when she's awake and baby's taken out of her arms and we see him going out the door and all the fans, and it's like the Lion King.
Yeah, but it was literally like offering the baby up
Right.
to the world.
Yeah. And again, this is where I was going with the Christ allegory. Like, he's forgiven all of our sins, all these people, because you're right, it got so congregational and zealotness. And they take the baby and they kill him.
This was by far the worst part in the entire film for me personally. It was so hard to watch.
It was hard to
because
watch.
you, as a human being that has emotion, you should feel for this baby getting literally tossed around like this is a newborn child. Don't treat it in such way. Just to crack the neck. Which, the most
sound.
horrible sound.
It was
ever.
awful.
Anything cracking.
It was
is
awful.
horrible.
I was going, what am I
Literally,
watching?
I had a what the fuck moment. Like, I think everybody did. I mean, I think it's actually safe to say that everyone, because people aren't expecting that. People aren't expecting a baby to get tossed around and like
way.
crowd surfing in a horrible way just to get killed.
And whoever's online, like, what did you think of that
Oh
scene?
my god,
Like,
it was
is
horrible.
anybody-
I don't even want to think about it. It's so viscerally disturbing. And
I agree.
Oh.
What are the people who are watching this online like? Has anybody commented on that? Because that scene was
Not yet, but let us know, you guys.
Yeah.
I am reading
No,
the
we're
live
very
chat.
curious.
Were you as disturbed as we were?
And were you as confused? Were you going, what's going on? We really want to know. And I think this is the fun part of a movie discussion, whether we like a movie or not. So then things really go to shit. Like, things just go nutso. And you understand now Jennifer Lawrence's character, you're like,
And this is, I think, where the editing comes into play too,
Yes.
because it jumps so many beats within a minute that you don't know how to process it, because it's literally just like a bombardment of so many
it's a
different
war
things.
movie. It becomes
is.
a war movie.
It's literally a bombardment, because we see the mother go up to the baby, and who was just newly killed. Then it was like a jump shot to now we just see a carcass of the baby, and then we see the people eating the baby, that's another whole disturbing thing on another level.
And the mother is like trying to crawl through the muck and mire of all this.
And
things.
on top of eating the baby, they are now physically beating up the mother, kicking and pulling her hair.
Blaming her.
It was literally a bombardment of so many things happening within 2 minutes of screen time.
Right.
Like, what the hell am I watching?
I felt as if I were being beat up.
I think any audience member would feel like they're being beat up as well.
Yeah, did people agree with us on this? If they're
That neck snap was really chill-inducing.
It was awful.
Yes, it was.
It was terrible. And then Jennifer Lawrence getting beat up, kicked, punched.
She does not deserve that either.
No, it's her house for crying out. Like, what? And that's where I'm like, what is going on here?
Right.
And she's crawling, and people are dying. People are getting their heads blown off. It becomes a Saving Private Ryan
Oh my
kind
God.
of. It's the storming of Normandy happening in their house, and then she finally has had enough, and she goes, "That's it. I'm done. Screw you guys. I'm going home." But you're all,
home.
and
She goes down to the basement.
goes out of the basement, where there's been
There's
a
this
scary
scary, there's a scary furnace boiler underneath that they keep referencing
keep
throughout
going
the
back
movie.
to.
Like, she keeps, and this is also elements of horror. It's like, why is our main protagonist going all the way down to a scary basement by themselves with no lights? I'm like, you stupid person,
And
just you fool, and turn on the lights.
But to be
in that
fair,
way.
it is one of the places that she's had her connectivity to the house, or visions.
Yeah,
right? Where we've seen things, and
you can
and
see how
color-wise,
things like.
Yes.
You see moments throughout the entire film that leads up to this particular place in the house.
Mm-hmm.
You knew it was going to be a pivotal location.
Right. So, and then she eventually blows up the house.
Good.
Blows it up in fine fashion. And she is left charred. Amazing that she survived.
Yeah, and this is where me as a viewer, this is where you have to, suspend your disbelief, because it was like, no way would someone
Here's
ever.
where you had to suspend
No, I know there are so many moments in this film, but this is literally one of the moments where you're like, okay, you can't believe anything.
Right.
What the fuck is happening?
No.
The fact that him was completely unharmed,
Right.
and she was a terrible third-degree burned person. In that sense, I was like, no way would she have ever survived this explosion. And this is where I'm like, okay, I can't believe anything that I just watched.
Right. Now, let me ask you something, and I ask the audience who's watching us too, and anybody who watches us later. When that happened, right, did it take you back to the opening scene of the movie where there was sort of kind of this unrecognizable woman who was all charred?
Yeah.
Right.
So the very, very, very first shot of this film
Yeah.
is a woman and her face, but you can see the background's completely on fire, and
she's
the
burned.
face is like, degraded in
Yeah.
some way. Like it's been damaged. It's
Burned
been
bad.
through the ringer.
But it's nobody we recognize.
No.
Because I was like, who the hell is this?
Yeah, right. And when it like the whole house kind of shifts back
More,
to
right.
normal, thanks to the special effects, and then like reverts back to normal, it opens up in Jennifer Lawrence.
Right.
But that's also with that little fact thing, that with that little segment at the beginning, you
Right.
knew the movie was going to play up to a moment where there's going to be fire and chaos.
Right. Exactly. And let's talk about a little bit about the house before we go to the full ending. So, Philip Messina, who actually worked on the Hunger Games.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
he did.
So, creating the octagonal house offered the most unique experience in world building. And he goes on to say, what was amazing to me was how, more than any other film, it was symbiotic relationship between. Now, here's what's interesting. It's not between the actors or whatever. It's between camera moves and set. So the house was built for camera moves and set.
Yep.
And Messina, who collaborated closely with Aronosky's cinematographer Matthew Libatique. So, and then it goes on. Jennifer is the spirit mother Earth. Bardem, the god. The house represents planet. And Messina's going on and how he had to make this house, this planet in which we all are supposed to live.
Exist
When you
on.
think of house, too, you do think of harmony. You know, home is where the heart is.
Yeah, right.
And
Or a
oh
place
my
of
God,
safety.
I just thought of that too. Home is where the heart is, and there's a beating heart in the house.
No,
So,
that's
right.
exactly what I was saying. I was
Yeah.
like, what the hell was in the toilet? Was it the heart of the house?
That's
Who
what
knows?
I thought.
And you're
But,
literally draining it down down to the toilet.
but it's interesting because I came across various theories about what that was too.
Mm-hmm.
I just viewed it as a heart, but I viewed what was whenever she had her hand on a wall.
Mm-hmm.
I viewed that as a beating heart.
Like she's
as
connected
well.
to the
She's
house.
connected, right?
The house is a being in and of its own.
It is. It's a character in this movie.
Yeah.
Much like locales that we've talked about in various movies. So she's burned. Javier Bardem picks her up. And he's like, you have to give me more. She's like...
More than I've already given you throughout this
Right.
whole effing film.
And again, this is where I was thinking, okay, she's his muse. Like, she is the inspiration for his writing. And I was like, and I was even thinking of that movie, The Muse, with Albert Brooks and Sharon Stone. and that's why I wrote, well, is this about the creative process? Because the pain of childbirth. Every creator believes that their creation that they're working on now is their baby.
Right.
You know? And then they have to see it grow, and they have to eventually let go of it. But when the baby gets killed, they got to start all over again.
Yeah.
Is that like a crazy leap if you know nothing going into this movie? Is that crazy to think? And then she's like, I got nothing. He goes, well, you have one more thing. You have one more thing to
Yeah.
give. The sacrifice. And she goes, you can have it. So, and that's to me.
Because this is at the point where like she has nothing left to give other than her crystal heart,
Right.
which is
Well,
the thing
that's
at
where
the
you
beginning of the
find-
film.
And this is where you find out this is that precious stone.
The precious crystal.
So
Pink
I
Panther
look at the Pink Panther diamond and I say, well, this is the mother of all inspiration. This is the necessity. And this is where I'm thinking the creative process. But then I come to learn, what the hell do I know? Because I started reading magazine articles, and I think it's time we should break down the allegories
Yes.
of this movie.
Let's do.
Has anybody
shall
else? Let me ask, and I'm going to ask you, Marisa, though I think I know the answer because we've talked about this. I went into this movie not really knowing, thinking it might be, thinking it was going to be a horror movie. Not
thought of
a
it-
religious allegory about Mother Earth, God, and all this stuff.
Okay, I didn't think so either. Because just based on the trailer, I kind of got a Rosemary's Baby effect, and I think
Sure.
that's where once we get to marketing,
Sure.
I think that's what threw people off a bit because we didn't know what to expect in this film. I thought the people coming to the house was more like a cult, and with just the title of mother, which is so literal, you think, oh great, she's gonna have a baby. Once we see the man and wife don't have children, I was like, oh great, she's gonna get pregnant. We kind of knew that was gonna happen.
Right.
I didn't think there was gonna be religious ties to this at all. But watching it during the whole moment where there was like an ashes scene, you know, with the distribution of ashes. And I'll preface to anyone.
Right.
Yeah, I'll preface to anyone who's never watched our show. I am Catholic. I grew up Catholic. I've gone through like almost all the sacraments. You know, baptism, confirmation. I used to be a Eucharistic minister. I've been a lector. I was a person. I was a server. I've done like everything that you can do other than be a priest for mass. And so like I'm very in tune with the religious aspect of this. I have even distributed ashes. I have been that person. So when I saw that moment when they were all lining up and like getting basically ashes, and they were getting marked by God.
Ash Wednesday, right.
Ash Wednesday. I was like, that's where I, as a viewer, I was like, this has religious moments to it. These could be Catholics worshiping a God. And then it started making sense afterwards once I was realizing what was going on.
Was that before or after the birth of the baby?
That was before the baby.
That was before the baby.
That was before the baby.
Right.
But there was the moment when everyone was like single in a line. I was like, this is Ash Wednesday happening right now. Yep. Okay, so the allegories. Him is God.
Right.
Javier Bardem.
That's what they're saying. That's what I've read.
It's supposed to represent God and the Creator. And God's creation has a tendency to go wild, leading him to continuously wash away his work and start anew over and over until things run more smoothly, says Aronosky himself. And we know this due to Bibles and the history. When something goes wrong, God tends to wash away the earth. We had Noah in the ark, God always has the covenants where he will literally wipe the earth clean and start again. He's done that several times, with the Great Flood, with the Great Fire.
And there was a flood.
Yes, and there was a flood in this.
There was a flood in the movie.
And there was a fire in this movie. And that's where the whole movie stops and starts again, and we are literally back to the beginning of the film.
And you can take it further too, because God created humanity, and gave humanity dominion over Earth. And as we talked about, if the house is the planet, if the house is Earth, he allowed people into the house. He allowed them to
live and walk among the earth.
Right.
Yes.
So again, to me, okay, I upon reading it, and it's in our notes too, Vanity Fair had a magnificent, I think,
excellent,
probably the best breakdown. So you'll have it, you'll be able to click on that link. I think of every article that I read that is about the symbolism and allegories, I think the Vanity Fair piece broke it down the most succinctly. And I was able to understand it.
Yes.
A simpleton like myself.
It makes sense once you know the allegories and you can literally tie it to the characters in this film. So Mother, which is Jennifer Lawrence's Mother Earth, is that Aronosky also says, I think is just like an initial reaction to being punched. We are telling the story of Mother Nature turning into a female energy, Jennifer Lawrence, and we defile the earth, and that's them destroying the house. We call her dirt. We don't clean up after our mess. We drill into her. We cut her down. We cut down her forest. We take without giving back, and that is the character of Mother, destroying the house, destroying her, beating her up with nothing in return. So man, Adam, which was Ed Harris, he, is the man's dying, but we saw that glimpse of the scar on his back. That's essentially Harris's rib. Adam's rib. You take the rib out, and then literally what happens the next day? We get the female, and that's in the creation of Genesis. If all of you don't know, just read the book of Genesis in the Bible.
But did you? Okay. Let's stop right there for a second. Let's freeze this for a second. All right. So, okay. I can sort of kind of buy the God thing. Okay. I can sort of kind of buy the mother thing. Okay. I see where they're going. once I was reading about Adam and Eve, then I wasn't buying it. Because, at least from what little I know about Adam and Eve and from what I grew up going to Sunday school and learning about, they were first man and woman.
Yes.
And love for each other. And then there was the apple. But I never knew Adam to be very sick and dying. Like, I didn't know what
and I think that was just
all about.
an element for the film. I think for character development, it would make sense if the sick and dying man's last request was to see his idol. That I understood in that sense.
Okay.
It wouldn't be like, but you wouldn't know that. I mean, well, let's get back to the allegories.
Well,
but yeah,
But
I understand.
after reading it, I wasn't buying it, and I can understand Michelle Pfeiffer because of the frilly underwear, temptation. But where was the apple off the tree? Like, I'm like going,
No,
wait,
but-
this is
okay.
a leap.
No, this is what, again, I'll explain.
Okay.
So for the apple is the crystal. That is the forbidden fruit. You're not supposed to go into this room. God,
Okay.
him literally told Adam and Eve to do not go into the forbidden forest. God, Harry Potter, sorry. To go into the Garden of Eve.
Right.
And so God said, don't go here. And then there was temptation with the snake, don't eat this fruit.
Right.
Basically in this film is don't touch this crystal.
Right.
What did they do? They went into his room, they touched the crystal, and they shattered it.
Right.
That is the tie into Adam and Eve.
Okay.
That is their
Okay.
forbidden fruit.
I'll buy that. And then, okay, sure.
Sure.
Oh, no.
Does it make sense?
No, it makes sense. How the hell am I going to get there not knowing what the hell I'm walking into in the first place?
But that's exactly
Like,
the
if I
thing.
was walking
That's
into
what
Sunday
I
school-
said at the beginning
Right.
of this discussion. Like,
Right.
watching this film, you're going to have the what the fuck moments. But
Right.
when you're told afterwards and you're literally spoon-fed that these are direct references to
Right.
allegories, you're like, ah, I get it.
Right.
That is that moment. So, yes. Yeah, the forbidden fruit is the crystal. In that room, the
Okay.
study.
It makes, I guess, sense because it's red electricity. At least it appears red.
Yeah.
Anyways, and
Basically.
it breaks.
Basically.
And God is
God's upset with them.
angry,
Yes.
but He's forgiving as well. to an
Yes,
extent.
in a way, also because once the forbidden fruit, was eaten, that was the creation of original sin.
Right. So, okay. Now, let's stay in the Adam and Eve for just a second because we talked about the bathroom. We talked about the toilet and the plunging. So, some viewers, like us here, assume the body part was a heart. But the production designer, as we just talked about, Messina, interpreted the script detail as being the moment in the Bible when God takes Adam's rib and creates woman.
Yeah.
My interpretation of it was that it was the piece of Adam that had been sloughed off because Bardem was in the bathroom with the surgeon, but he's not a surgeon. There's clearly a wound on his back, his rib cage, and the next morning his wife shows up.
Appears.
So,
And that's
do
what
you
happened-
buy that?
That I actually buy because that's also what happens in the Bible. So God takes the rib from Adam, and literally overnight in the morning, the female was created.
Correct. But did you buy that was a rib?
I didn't buy that was a rib, no,
Okay.
because the thing that was in the toilet literally looked like an organ.
Right.
If it was a rib, it would have been bone. The
Right.
thing that was in the toilet was like flesh of something.
Right.
Something.
Right.
And a rib wouldn't go down a toilet. An organ would.
So
But it was just nasty.
the production designer brings up another good point. As a viewer, this is still early enough in the film where you think this is a real environment and you're not quite sure how crazy the world is going to get, which he's right. Because this is one of the first times where you go, huh, wait, okay. And on set, they actually called that the chicken breast. It was like an amorphous, fleshy piece. To
Yeah.
me, Messina thinks it was too gross to be a heart, but to me, it really looked like a heart.
Yeah, it looked like a heart. or whatever. But again, there are so many theories out there, and people are wondering what the hell that was in the toilet. But whatever, it's gone.
Right.
So the sons are Cain and Abel.
That's right.
And they're fighting over, the love of their parents, and in the movie, the love of the trust and the money. And in the story, there's also like, oh, you always favored the younger son over the adults, the older son,
Right.
and it is Cain who kills Abel.
Right.
So, and it is the older brother who kills the younger brother.
Right. But didn't Cain come back?
Due to the parents?
Wasn't he the prodigal son? Or am I mixing up two stories?
That is
here?
completely different story.
So Cain does not come back
No.
at all.
No.
When he
And that's what
disappears-
added the horror element to just the film. So this is where the movie gets confusing. You're like, what's allegory and what's just for the story of the film,
Right.
the sake of the film. And I thought that part was the sake of the film, and Cain came back because you don't expect him to come back.
He just disappeared.
Yeah, it's
And
like,
he
well,
comes
he in the biblical story, he kills the brother, and then he
Right.
goes back to the parents, covered in fur, and trying to convince the parents that he's actually the younger son.
back. Okay.
That's basically
They never go
the story.
back that. Okay.
No.
So, okay. So if your audience are watching us, let me ask you at this point, without knowing what you know now, what Marisa has broken down, and we talked allegory. Did you figure this out in the movie, or I mean, hey, I'm the first to admit that sometimes I'll miss things, but I only caught religious reference to the ashes, as you said, and to the baby Jesus being born.
Right.
That was it. Up to that, I mean, in hindsight, which is always 20/20,
Yeah.
you go,
Hindsight, you're like,
it's Cain and Abel. Okay, if that's what they meant. But Jesus Christ, why didn't? Okay, whatever.
Yeah. So the baby is Jesus Christ,
So
and
the
the
baby?
literal eating of flesh and blood that happens in the mass. Every mass has been there's the whole moment where the Eucharist gets converted into the blood and flesh of Jesus Christ,
Right.
and they're literally eating them. Very disturbing to convey the message of what religious mass actually is.
Did he die? And again, this is where number one, from growing up, it was a virgin birth, right? It was the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus. This wasn't a virgin birth.
No,
at all.
and because the audience didn't see how the baby was conceived. We just get the mother saying, "I'm pregnant,"
Right.
and I just know that I'm pregnant.
Right, but there was this scene before they were in bed that on the stairwell that almost like started off angry, but then turned into
yeah.
lust and passion.
Yeah,
And they go, "Come on, let's go upstairs." And so they go up, and then it's next morning. She wakes up and she goes, "I'm pregnant."
pregnant.
I know. I just know.
It just happens.
So,
And that is where babies come from, you guys.
Yeah. And did he really die for their sins? Like, I get this, but they just seem to want to use pieces that they wanted to use. And I get it. I can connect those dots, but there seem to be dots missing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, did he die for our sins? Was this baby,
In this film, the baby just died out of immoral, unethical reasons, which are not explained in the film.
Right,
In the Bible, it's actually explained why Jesus died and why he sacrificed himself to save everybody. So
Right.
gives everybody literally the opportunity to go to heaven.
Yeah, and it wasn't that people didn't believe in the baby. It was almost overjubilation that killed the baby.
Yeah.
Right?
It was more so that they loved him so much that they killed him.
Right. This is where my hair.
Yeah, this is where you're like,
I'm reading this.
what?
Going,
We're
okay.
trying to process the film.
All right, so let's go on. So we have baby
So
Jesus,
the
Jesus
literal baby
dies,
in the
gets
movie
killed.
is Jesus.
Supposed to be
Christ,
Jesus, right?
who
right?
dies for everyone.
Yep.
Everyone loves him,
Yep.
adores him, but yet humankind still kills Jesus
Yes.
in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
The publicist, which is Kristen Wiig.
Well, it comes out of nowhere, by the
Yeah,
way. And then
I'm like, and it's no fault to Kristen Wiig.
No.
She's mostly known for comedy.
Sure.
We know that, but I think she's just a person when she shows up in whatever movie it is. It's so off-putting. it does actually take you out of the film.
In this movie, because
And it doesn't work for the film.
No, and I agree with you. And as I said too, it's because at this point in her career, she's very recognizable. Like, so when you see her, you go, "Oh, it's Kristen Wiig," and then you go, "I didn't know she was in this movie.
Like, what the
hell
fuck is she
doing
doing
in this
here?"
movie?
Exactly.
Like, what happened?
Exactly. You have those exact secondary questions, like,
Right.
why are you even here?
Right. And it
but
did take me out of the movie.
Aronosky also says the reason why Kristen was in it is a small role representing the biblical herald.
Right.
Someone, and for people who don't know what herald is, it is someone who makes a public proclamation. She's the one proclaiming God and him in this. And comedically, which this film can't really save itself by comedy, trust me.
No.
Depicts as a literary publicist. The one like proclaiming, she's the voice of, promoting him. So she also ends up being caught in the film's craziness, and yeah, she also dies, thankfully. So
Who doesn't?
I mean,
But, yeah.
right. But her appearance was just so not what we needed in the craziness that is already happening.
Yeah, and again, I think that is where this movie, knowing what you know and knowing that she's the herald, right?
Yeah,
she's a proclamation.
She's the
satire
literal
is-
figure of a herald.
Yeah, and the satire of it is, she's a Hollywood publicist, in a sense. She's a literary publicist, Hollywood publicist.
Yeah.
So
She's a literary agent.
I do want to go back because we're talking about allegories. So I want to go back to the house again, because something that I learned, and it's in the notes too, is the house. When Messina was doing research on these Victorian homes, Messina and Aronosky discovered that some Victorian homes were actually built in 8-sided shape, and scientists believed it was the perfect shape for none other than the brain. I think I might be missing a side. People
Brain is
accuse
not
me of that.
octagonal.
They're saying
but
that
okay.
symbolically
Okay.
it is. And when you think
Sure.
of the house as being a brain that all this is going into, it doesn't make things more understandable.
No.
So,
it doesn't.
but this is coming from the thing, from Vanity Fair. So let's talk about, all right, so we talked about the baby Jesus. We talked about the herald. Then what's after this that we talk about? Because mother's connection to the house we can talk about.
So I think Jennifer Lawrence's mother was the physical depiction of the house. We had the house
Right.
just stationary there, but we saw everything that was going through the house that was happening physically and emotionally that was happening to the house was also happening to the mother, Jennifer Lawrence.
Now Darren Aronofsky, too, proves at least our simple theory of that the moments when she touches the wall and has the direct connection, right, seen almost as a beating heart. I mean, that's what I took
what
it
we've been
as,
saying, yes.
and more organic in structure inside the house that she's connected to. Now, as for the moments when Lawrence puts her finger through the wooden floor, they actually had discussion about what texture the wood required. And do we want the wood to splinter? Do we want it to be mushy?
Mushy, it was mushy.
And
Nasty.
no, it's they said it should be like a gushy wound.
like a human flesh,
Yeah.
something that would have feelings if you touched it.
Yeah. I do you really want to know what I thought it looked like? I
No.
mean, yeah. It was definitely bleeding.
It
I'll leave it
was,
at that.
and it kept coming back.
And it kept coming back.
And that's the problem. It was like an injury that literally kept coming back.
And they put the
to
rug
house.
on it to absorb, which
Yeah.
it absorbed
Like a
this
Band-Aid,
blood.
like you would with a Band-Aid in a wound. It's still there. You're just
Right.
covering it up, trying to heal it.
Right.
But more on the house, the technical aspects of the house too. You mentioned the technical thing, but because we're literally watching Jennifer Lawrence walk up and down and left and right and frontwards and
Right,
backwards
right.
throughout this whole freaking house. It's actually how they shot it was actually pretty interesting. So they did the principal shooting was started June 13th,
Right.
2016, so last year. But they used 16 millimeter frames for the close-ups and over the shoulder shots because it
Right.
is such a isolated type of situation, and we're following her around and we're
Right.
feeling and seeing what she's saying. But they actually did a 3-month rehearsal
Right.
in Brooklyn just to get the blueprint and the spacing and the timing and the blocking of the house, and they had to get the physical atmosphere and construct it. And they constructed every shot to be 360 degrees so they can move around the house
Right.
with very few stops. And the camera operator, Chris Mosley, shot an entire version of the movie. And even Aronosky shot an entire version of the movie on his iPhone during this rehearsal. And so in the house they actually had to build some of it was in the actual physical Victorian house,
Right.
and then some of it they actually had to construct on a soundstage,
Right.
because
It
just
was-
the physical shots of going up and down stairs was just literally physically impossible to pull off, that they had to create an actual set so they
Yeah.
can walk up and
They
down.
built two.
Yeah.
They had two sets. A house with an entire first floor and a staircase in Montreal for daytime sequences, and a full 3-story version on a soundstage for the night sequence. They even played with virtual reality during prep. They loaded a model within the Oculus system, and Darren went through the 3D model, catch this, with a Nintendo. With a Nintendo controller, and made suggestions. So, and Messina, who designed the installations for Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, the immersive VR about intense refugee border crossing Carney Arena Flesh and Sand. So we had a nighttime shoot, and then we had like daytime.
And we know Inarritu has pulled that off with Birdman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So editing for the movie, 53 weeks.
A lot.
That's a year.
They spent longer editing the film than they did
Am I wrong?
filming.
52 weeks is a year, right?
52 weeks
So
is
this is
a
a
year.
year and 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
My math is right that time.
Right.
So
You're asking the wrong person. For
that's
math.
yeah, it's crazy the amount of work that was put into this and the editing, and then on top of that we get all this allegory. So now here was something. Now the image of Bardem taking mother's heart. This has something to do, according to Aronosky. Here's the tree that gives up everything for the boy. I don't know what he's talking about. Do you know what he's talking about in this one? Oh, well, Aronofsky said that the children's book, The Giving
Tree. I was like, I'm literally Googling it. I was like,
No
this
way.
sounds like Giving Tree.
Yeah, well.
Like, look at that, Giving Tree. People who are watching us, I'm Googling Giving Tree because that's the only thing. Because that's Shel Silverstein. Mm-hmm. And that's about a boy who keeps going back to this tree and asking for an apple, I believe.
Right. So that's where that comes from.
Okay, that I understood.
Okay. Well,
Not till after the fact, though.
not till I read afterwards. And again, I don't have the press notes for this. I really knew nothing other than what I saw marketing wise. So now we take another leap to Hindu religion. Okay, so once he takes the heart out, puts it back in his pedestal or his little holder, the cycle begins again.
Yeah. That's basically God wiping out his creation and starting anew.
And Jennifer Lawrence in makeup, because she doesn't look like Jennifer Lawrence. Another person comes up out of the bed. And do you believe that things are going to
Get better?
get better, or do you think it all plays out the same?
I think it's also like history repeats itself, but God knows and he has faith in creating something again, and he has the power. If he doesn't like it, he'll just wipe it all clean again and start again.
Is that climate change? I mean,
D-
I mean,
No. It's a terrible notion, or like it's a scary notion more so. But in the biblical sense, that is what God is known for. But he has also made promises he'll never destroy the earth in like such ways again. Like that's what the covenant is for. It's the covenant is an actual promise to never do something again.
Right. So, all right, let's talk a little bit. So there are all the allegories. For the people who are online, have they mentioned whether or not they picked these things out, like as they were watching it, or are they saying, "Wow, okay, now that you're explaining it"?
Yeah, a lot of them knew about allegories, so the literal allegories.
No, but so a lot of our viewers who might be chiming in, because I didn't know this was all going to be in this movie.
No.
So that's why. So
the Star Drew says, thank goodness he didn't watch this movie because it sounds crazy. Or Recco, who says
But
this
you
is
know,
Recco.
who is this? Who says this?
Star Drew. Thank you, Star Drew.
Star Drew, well, thanks for writing. But now, your challenge...
to now watch the film.
Yes, your mission, if you decide to accept, is to go watch the movie knowing what you know now, and then come back onto YouTube and comment.
Like,
and
can you
go,
make the references?
Yes. Can you put those dots together?
Yes.
And then, if you can, and it made the movie a better movie-going experience for you, could you just say, thanks, Popcorn Talks, Anatomy of a Movie? Or if you hated it, go, I hated it just like you did. And then we'll be, oh, well, of course you did.
Well, I didn't hate the film. I'm actually very indifferent to this film. I mean, I'm a Catholic. You think I would be actually disturbed by this. Watching it physically disturbs me as a human being. It gave me visceral reactions. But I'm not going to be like, fuck this movie. Yeah. Because it's heresy and it's blasphemy. Watching this, I probably will go to hell watching this. Like I'm not thinking in that sense. I was like, as a creator, as a creative person, from one creative person to another creative person, I understand why Aronosky made this film.
Sure.
But is it the best? Probably not. Is it the worst? Probably not.
I don't know. But let's talk a little bit about, because here's something interesting. So this is a 2-hour movie, all right? Did you realize that within the 2 hours, Jennifer Lawrence, she's in close-up
the whole
for
time.
66 minutes of this 120-minute film.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was like I felt suffocated watching her walk around this damn house.
Right. So and
hi guys, sorry to interrupt. I'm Brianna. I'm in the booth.
Hey, Brianna.
What's up, Brianna?
I just wanted to say, because in the beginning, thinking this was a horror film more than it was going in, and all those close-ups, it actually was that Bardem and Lawrence were never in the same shot besides back of head for a very long amount of the beginning of this film, which I had thought to some example one of them didn't exist.
Like a Sixth Sense kind of deal.
For about 2 seconds, I was thinking the same way, and I thought that it might have been Bardem's character because he sneaks up on her. Sneak up is the best word that I can come up with. When she goes to the door.
Yeah, right.
The other interesting thing about it, too, is that they don't necessarily leave the house. Like, well, God does.
She never leaves the
house.
She never leaves the house. God leaves a lot of times.
He goes
actually.
hiking.
I keep saying, like, come back and help her. She's literally by herself. Help her.
Right.
That's like, as a woman, I was just like looking out for another woman. Like, she's in distress.
Right.
A good husband and good man would come back and help her.
Yeah.
I think that's supposed to be all part of the allegory of when you really need God, He's not there for you.
He's not there for you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wow.
And that's also a lot of, Catholics or whatever religion you want to believe in would also be very against that. So I can see why people hate that, because when they feel like they have nothing or they are nothing, they turn to God.
Yeah, I know.
So in complete contrary to that belief, a lot of people who would hate this film would actually believe that God is the only thing that's left for them.
Yeah, I won't get into stuff, but I wanted to talk a little bit more too about Jennifer Lawrence. They actually the mother scene, the days leading up to that mother scene. Jennifer Lawrence, it is said that she started panicking and losing her breath overdoing this because it was going to be so dark. And believe it or not, they actually had something. For whatever silly reason, I hate to even give this. They had a tent. I'm just going to call it a tent.
It was like a decompression tent.
It was stocked with gumballs and photos of various reality stars.
Keeping up with the Kardashians.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't even want to give the name out.
Yeah, well, I didn't even.
show's
If
playing
people
on
know
Hulu.
me, know that I hate the Kardashians.
And
But it
that-
was a decompression tent because
it
this movie was
to
so
get
dark
away.
for her.
It was to
Yes.
get away. And they said that Jennifer Lawrence hardly used the tent. And in filming that disturbing scene, she hyperventilated to the point where she tore her diaphragm and had to be taken to the infirmary
And she dislocated a rib.
and put on oxygen.
See, that sounds painful. Just
Yeah.
in a physical sense.
Yeah, that sounds.
But
I don't know how
just
you
going
tear
through
a
it, she's
diaphragm, that's
literally going
awful.
through the ringer of portraying this character.
Right.
This movie is so dark and twisted that it physically affected her mentally and physically.
Right, and it's even more so too. They even manipulate. Like you talked about the creaking floorboards, right?
Ugh.
And
It's
so
like I'm
a
so
lot
tired
of, that,
of like locations just creaking. Like I get it, it's creepy. Just show me the building. You don't have to make me listen to the building.
They also digitally
This is why I don't watch
manipulated
horror.
her roar. You know, I am mother, hear me roar. Like her screams were digitally manipulated.
I can believe.
So, but yeah, very, very. It's just I mean, you can tell that the work went in, especially if it takes 53 weeks to edit this movie. That's a lot. I mean, that's a long time. That's a year
It is.
to put this all together. And they did use Super 16 film. They snaking through the house in mother's POV. It did look real when it needed to look real, and look very surreal. So, yeah, I mean, I think we've broken down the allegories. We've talked about the house, the characters, the acting, what everything meant. I think it's important that we.
I think one more thing about the production
Yeah, go
before
ahead.
we move on
Sure.
to box office numbers,
Yeah.
which I thought
I
is
wanna talk
interesting
about-
because every once in a while we do talk about film and stuff. They filmed on a 60mm film, but they also while the film progressed later on in the later scenes with the house destruction, when literally the last 30 minutes of the film and everything was going literally to hell, the film stock was re-rated and underexposed until the third act.
Until the third act.
Till the
Yeah.
third act, and they pushed Aronosky, Libetig, the cinematographer, says we pushed the film one step further to gain a thicker negative and saturate the color disparities.
Right.
Because the only color we really see in the house is when all the people come in and there's fire.
Right.
Everything else up until that point is muted and saturated.
Right, and they actually, and this proved to be one of the biggest challenges of the entire movie was they threw a Molotov cocktail within that claustrophobic
Yeah,
space.
the movie progressively gets more saturated red when people come in, we see the blood and all that.
Right.
Like there was a moment where the house turned blue.
Yes.
When the literal explosions were going on, the house turned blue, and then we had the baby, and then everything in the house turns red.
Sure.
And we have
Yeah.
a lot of red in
Lot of
our
red, lot of
graphic for this particular
Absolutely.
film.
So we have to talk about the marketing. I don't know if this, should we lead it? Now I'm all verklempt here. Like, do we talk marketing or do we talk about going into the box office? Let's talk about the numbers, because I think
Yeah,
that
numbers.
is directly into marketing. So the production budget on the movie is estimated at $30 million, which means that Paramount
Not a
probably
whole lot.
spent. No. That's a very modest budget. But then we also have, but you got to throw in, it probably cost all in between print and advertising and such about 55 to 60 million, all in. This is production,
Right.
what they spent for the marketing and such. So currently, with all that said, we have a movie that.
I wasn't sold on the marketing, honestly.
Well, no, I wasn't. I wasn't sold on the marketing.
Because I saw the
as
teaser
well.
trailer where it was just the first opening shot of Jennifer Lawrence's character walking through the house, and
And
from
heard the
that,
sounds.
from that I
cooking
kind of
sounds.
understand it might be like a thriller aspect. But then when they released the fuller length trailer, not the teaser, it looked more like a horror.
Well, yeah, they marketed it as a horror movie, but yet, if you noticed, you didn't really learn anything about the movie. At least I never
No.
came away walking.
You just know crazy things are happening.
Right. And I never came away knowing what this movie was going to be about. A few weeks ago, when I was fortunate and honored to be asked to be on the movie press, we sort of talked about this, where we talked about how you can judge a movie before seeing the movie. And I agreed with that viewer to an extent, because sometimes when you watch a trailer, you just know. Like, you can just tell
Right.
that you're going to run into an issue. When you can't cut a trailer, and if you come up with more than one trailer, and that trailer can't tell you what the movie's about, really, you'd walk away going, okay, that's great. Looks creepy, but I have no idea what's going on. That's, to me personally,
Issues.
that's an issue.
But also, Aronofsky is a more established director now, and we know he's very stylistic, and his movies are usually left open for interpretation.
They can be,
He
yeah.
has built a avid following and a
Sure.
loyal following who will just watch whatever movie that he has. So
Agreed.
he has the name and credits to get people to watch this film,
Right.
no matter what the subject content is
True.
or whatever.
True. So the movie opens up, as we said. The movie opened up to $7.5 million. It opened up number 3.
Number 3.
And it was on 2,368 theaters.
That's a wide release.
That's a wide release. Interesting. And as of September 21st, we're looking at $10 million. Now, they did open up the movie internationally. And thus far, that's brought in $7 million. So worldwide, it's done $17 million. I'm not sure, particularly after this weekend,
It's not going to get better.
I don't think it's going to make 60 million or 30 million,
Oh, heck no.
even with your foreign release. Which, again, going back to the marketing, I just wonder if they took a platform release. Go art house. Like, release at the Landmark.
I know, and
kinds
this
of
movie was
theater.
originally scheduled for an October release date, so around the horror movie schedule. But they actually pushed it up a month to September because they also wanted it premiered at the Venice Film Festival, which was August 30th, and then it also just premiered at Telluride in Toronto.
Right.
So they wanted to get it into the film festival cycle, but even a month makes a whole difference on a movie release.
No, absolutely, and it can. And here's something else. We'll talk Rotten Tomatoes, which I believe is either a 68 or 69%. The last I checked, it was at 68%.
Yes.
Okay. The cinema score for this movie. Now, this has gotten publicity all over because the cinema score for this movie is a rare F.
Rare F.
It's an F.
Yeah.
And that means that, well,
Something is wrong.
people were very irate. Now, I don't know how else Paramount could have marketed a movie that they were going to go wide release with. Which, again, it just makes me question, like, why did you think that this was a wide release movie? Had you platformed it, had it been, say, in October, and had you platformed it as a Darren Aronofsky art house film, right? I think that the writing about the movie would have been more solid, and that people going in knowing it's a Darren Aronofsky art house film, because you are right. His name on particular films, he's out there. He can be very existential, symbolic. You have to figure things out.
Right.
And had it that limited release, New York, LA, and the artsy fartsy folks are gonna go, and they'll probably come. Oh, I love this movie. But when you mass market a movie, Brianna, you just said too that you felt it was a horror movie, right?
There's some
I
horror
definitely,
elements.
I
Right?
definitely went into it thinking this is a horror film, especially, and it may have been because it was the weekend after it and kind of the creepy trailer. Maybe I was just in that mindset, but yeah, I definitely went into it thinking horror.
Okay, so then let me ask you: when
But
all was said
also-
and done, were you pissed off?
For it not being a horror?
Yeah, for like, what the hell is this? I thought it was a horror movie.
I wouldn't say I was pissed off. I was pissed off at the film because the film just made me angry, as
Right.
it did you too.
Yeah.
Especially the thought process of that happened to me.
Right.
I wasn't necessarily angry that it wasn't a horror film, but I just didn't think they did a good job in their marketing ploy to develop what film you were going to walk into.
Right.
I mean, look at the freaking movie poster.
Right.
If anyone's listening via iTunes, you should definitely check out just the promotional posters for this
Sure.
film. You see the Jennifer Lawrence's head with the house. It's very reminiscent of Rosemary's Baby.
Sure.
And I think that's where there was false marketing and false advertisement for this as a horror, because you can directly put the side by side next to Rosemary's Baby and it looks the exact same.
Yeah, I mean, they cheated the marketing for
They
sure.
did.
They and this happens too. A studio will cheat the marketing. They'll try to make they'll try to make a dark comedy look more like a slapstick comedy. They try to make a movie like Bug or Mother look like a flat-out horror movie. And Maria, you're right. It had come out like the week before. There is a real huge upswell right now for horror movies. I kid you not. When you had Annabelle Creation does really well, it is like the biggest horror movie ever. I was just recently at Son of Monster Palooza, which was selling out. This is a horror convention.
The horror films are coming out this part of the year.
Yeah, and they're becoming. It's in the cycle where they're on an up. They're on an uptick. So they marketed this as a horror movie, and then you just come out going, what the hell did I just watch?
Yeah.
So,
It's a fucking disaster movie, that's what it is.
well, yeah. It's, what can I say? So I think we broke this down.
As much as we could.
Well, I think of any other movie show, we gave this movie the best shake in breaking it down from an allegorical sense, where, as that gentleman who commented before, he hasn't seen the movie, maybe he'll go, and maybe he'll understand it more than we did.
Yeah.
And maybe he won't be as angry.
I think I would have maybe enjoyed the film more had I actually known that there were going to be direct ties to allegories.
Because when
I don't like getting spoiled when I watch something, but I think this is one of those movies that you can actually benefit in watching and might have a more positive reaction if you knew what you were watching.
Yeah, don't disrespect the house. I don't know. All I know is that when this thing went to Fade to Black, it was Feats Don't Fail Me Now. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
So, anyways, well, we will be getting ourselves out of here. We wanted to thank you for your time and watching, listening. Brianna, thank you for handling the ones and zeros and chiming in.
Ones and twos.
Always ones and twos. I go binary code for
Yeah.
ones and twos. So stay tuned to Anatomy of a Movie, because next week we'll be talking about
Kingsman.
the
Kingsman
Golden
2.
Circle.
We're really excited.
I had a lot of fun with that movie.
Yeah.
I did. So look forward to talking about that. And if you did see Mother, please comment. The movie, I think.
Let us know what you thought. Did you love it? Did you hate it?
It
I was indifferent.
definitely leads to conversation.
Yeah.
Whether you loved it or hated it.
I mean, we were talking about it right now.
We talked about it for a lot of time, and we
Yes.
broke down symbolism and everything. So what are your thoughts? So stay tuned to Anatomy of a Movie.
Where can people follow you?
Well, you can support me on Twitter at dmovies1701. So at dmovies1701. We hope to see you at the movies. And
Yeah,
please
you can
say
follow
again.
all of us here on Twitter at Movie Anatomy. We do movie every Friday. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Serafini TV.
I do follow you, and I saw your tweet as soon as you watched this movie. And you
Yeah.
go, well, yeah, I just saw that. So in
Yeah.
any case, folks, until next week.
Thanks for
we
tuning
hope
in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll hopefully see you at a movie or 2 or 3. Bye, guys.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.